Today we are doing our final lesson in 5th grade math. Can you believe it? This is the last one. So this is 11.11, finding the volume of composite figures. Let's do this. So composite figures are going to come back to you almost every grade that you have to learn geometry. Composite figures are just a figure that's made up of more than one figure. So this figure here doesn't have a name because it's made up of two separate rectangular prisms. So what we call it is a composite figure. And in order to make any kind of calculations, such as the volume, what we need to do is we have to imagine that we're breaking it apart and we have to calculate them separately. You're going to do this again in 6th grade. You're going to do it again in 7th grade. And if you're in regular 8th grade math, you will. If you're in algebra, that's probably the only class that you won't be doing this in. And then after that, geometry, you do it again. So it's very important. So there's two different ways that you can do these types of problems. This first way is the way that I prefer. I will still show you the other way. But this is, in my opinion, the best way to do it. So the first way is to break up the two figures and then find the volume of the two figures separately and then add them together. So if you look at the original, what you can do is, as it shows here, is you can take off this piece and bring it down and look at these two as separate figures. So they've broken it up for us, okay? The only thing you have to do is draw it yourself and then label the things that are not labeled. So for example, here, there's a 4 here. It wasn't labeled up here, but I know that it's a 4 because down here, this is the same. It's 4 here, so it's got to be 4 up here as well. So that's the only tricky part. So we're going to find the length, the width, and the height of each of these prisms. So the other tricky part here is that we need to find this height, and it's not given here. What we're told is that this whole thing is 6, but we only need this piece. So what you need to do is, if you know that the whole thing is 6, you need to look over to the other side and see if you know what this height is. And they do tell us that it's 2. So if this section is 2 inches, and we know that the whole thing is 6, I can figure out this little piece here. Because 2 plus whatever this is has to give me 6. So I can subtract the 2 from 6, or I can just figure it out in my head, and that's going to be 4. Okay, I hope that everyone can see that. This will have to be 4, because if the entire thing is 6, and this is 2, the missing piece has to add up to 6. So 4 plus 2 will give me that 6. Okay? The other prism is already labeled. Everything's labeled. I got 10, I got 4, and 2. So I'm good with that one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find each of the volumes separately. So I'm going to find the volume of this one first. Length times width times height. So 4 times 4 times 2. This is 16 times 2, which is 32 inches cubed. Now I go over to this one. Length times width times height is going to be 10 times 4 times 2. 10 times 4 times 2. 40 times 2 is 80 inches cubed. So now I know that this one's got a volume of 32 and this one's got a volume of 40. So to find the total volume, not 40, 80, sorry. To find the total volume, I'm going to add them up. So I'm going to do 32 plus 80. And that's going to give me 112. So the volume of the composite figure is 112 cubic inches. Okay? To be honest with you, the hardest part is labeling the pieces that you don't know. Okay? So let's take a look at another one. Actually, before we take a look at a different one, I'm going to show you the other way that this can be done, which is not my personal favorite, but it's a good way to do it. So another way you can do this, and it doesn't always work, but if you have if you have a composite figure that looks like it's missing a piece, what you can actually do is you can imagine that it's completely filled in, okay? And you can find the total volume of what it would be and then subtract this piece, okay? So step one, what we do is we find the greatest possible volume. So that means imagine that everything is filled in. What would that be? So we can see that the length would be 10. The width would still be 4. And then the height would be 6. Okay, so it's not hard to figure that part out. So then that volume would be 10 times 4 times 6. So that's 24 times 10, add the 0, 240. 240 cubic inches, okay? Now what I would do is I would find the volume of the imaginary prism here so that I can subtract it. So the length, this is going to be the tricky part. I have to subtract things. I know that this whole length is 10, and I need this piece. So just like we did before, I'm going to take away this amount. So if you look back at your diagram, this is 2 inches here, right? So in order for this whole thing to be 10, this piece has to add up to 10. So 2 plus 8 would give me 10. So that length would be 8. The height of this, same thing. We're going to subtract it. So this whole height is 6. And I know that this little height is 2. So just like before, I subtract the 2 from the 6, and that gives me 4. Sorry, that was the height, not the width. And now the width is going this way, and that happens to be the same, so that's 4. Okay, so then the volume is 8 times 4 times 4. And that'll give us 128. Just to show you that. 32, that's 32 times 4. I'll just show you. Sorry, because I don't want to do too much in my head here. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. That's how you get the 128. Okay? Now to actually solve this, you have to take the big prism and subtract the smaller one to get the answer. So you do 240 minus my imaginary one. And when you subtract that, you get 112 again. Okay? So the volume is 112. Now, most people prefer the first way. Usually this way requires more of the outside of the box thinking, subtracting, and whatnot. Okay, so it's really going to be up to you. If you like this way better, you can use it whenever you can. Okay? So we're going to try this together. We are going to find the volume of this composite figure that was made by putting together 3 rectangular prisms. So we're going to break each one up. So I'm going to take this little guy, okay, and then I'm going to take this big guy and this little guy, and I'm going to break them up, okay? So this one, I'm going to draw it separately over here. I can see that this one has a width of 3 and a height of 4. Now, it's going to take a few seconds for me to see, I'm sorry, that was the length. What the width is, not a few seconds. I have to look and see off to the side because I have to assume that these are all the same because nothing else is being said. Okay, so this is going to be 5. Sorry. Now the big one in the middle, they're telling us off to the side here the height is 8. And my length is 5 feet. And then again, the width is 5 feet for all of these. Okay. And now for the final little guy here, my height is 2. And my width is 5 feet, but I'm not told the length. So what I am told is that the whole length is 12. I know this one's 3 and this one's 5, so that's 8. So I need to know 8 plus what will give me 12, and that's going to be 4, right? So this has to be 4 feet here because it has to add up to 12, so that's going to be 4. So now that I have my 3 sketched separately, I'm going to find each volume. So the first one is 4 times 3 times 5. Okay, so that's 12 times 5, which is 60. Okay, and then my second one is 8 times 5 times 5. Okay, so that's 8 times 5 times 5. That's 40 times 5. So just think to yourself, do the 4 times the 5, which is 20, and add the 0. So it's 200. And then my last one is 4 times 5 times 2. 4 times 5 times 2, or any order, doesn't matter. So that's 20 times 2, which is 40. So now I have all 3 of the volumes, so now I have to add them all up. I'm just going to start with the biggest. 200 plus 60 plus 40. I know that 60 and 40 is going to give me 100, so this is like 200 plus 100, which is a total of 300 cubic feet. Voila. It's not too bad, right, guys? All right, so to finish up, I'm going to have you guys pause and try these 2 share and show problems yourself, and then unpause and check your answer. You can, for number 1, you can definitely try the other fill in the blank way. It's not my favorite, but you can use that if you like that. And you can also do that here if you would like to. Excuse you. Or you can break up the 2 figures, and I'll just tell you this is 1 figure. This is the second. And then here, same thing, you could cut it off right here and make 2 figures. All right, so go ahead and pause, try it out, and then unpause to check your answer. Okay, so my solution for number 1 is 88 inches cubed. Hopefully you got that. So I chose to break it up because that's just what I prefer. And I drew my first little guy here. I know that this width is 4 because it's the same. And I know that my length is 2 because it's given. And I needed to figure out my height. So just like the first example that we did, this total height here is 5. And I know that this height is 2 because it's given. So I just have to figure out the missing piece. 2 plus 3 will give me 5. So I knew that my height was 3. Then the larger rectangular prism, all of the dimensions were given. So the length was 8, the width was 4, and the height was 2. And then I just found each volume. So 4 times 3 times 2, that gave me 24. And then 8 times 4 times 2 gave me 64. I added them together, and I got 88. For number 2, I got 48 centimeters cubed. So again, I broke it up. So I took off this little chunk here, and I labeled it. Everything was actually given. The length was 3, the width was 2, and the height, if you look around, they give it, it's 1 over here. So 3 times 2 times 1 was 6. And then the bigger one, actually everything was given again. The length was 7, it's just back here. It's the same over here. The width was 6, and the height was 1. So 7 times 6 times 1 was 42. Added them together, and I got, oh, did I write 42? What did I do? 42 plus 6. I wrote 46 plus 6 on accident. 42 plus 6, sorry, is 48. Okay, and that's the answer. All right, guys, so this is kind of tedious and slightly annoying, but it's really not bad when it comes down to it. So just be careful when you're breaking up your figures. Remember, if you can't find a number, look to the back and the sides because it might be there somewhere. But you sometimes do have to find it yourself by using subtraction. All right, guys, have fun with your last 5th grade math lesson ever. Bye.